when I talk about spirituality, I'm talking so much about connecting with the universe, connecting with Mother Earth, and connecting with what's inside. And I think that's one of the biggest things that has transformed me, not only as an entrepreneur, but as a human being and as a partner and as a communicator and as a friend and as a daughter, as a coach, is my ability to tune into myself and to understand myself.
Welcome to the Embrace and Expand podcast, where we talk about everything from spirituality, self-development, relationships, mindfulness, wellness, and everything that will help you embrace all that you are so you can expand into the best version of yourself. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Embrace and Expand podcast. So the guest on this episode is a woman who has gone from unfulfilled 9-to-5 grind to entrepreneur and business savage. At 19 years old, she started her journey into the world of business as a makeup artist after studying at the Canadian Beauty College. Scaling from a bedroom in a small townhouse to a 2,000 square foot studio, she transformed from a simple artist to a savvy entrepreneur. Using her marketing background and over 20 certifications in the beauty industry, she turned CB Beauty into a 7-figure business. Now her purpose is to empower others to turn their passion into profits and experience true fulfillment in being their own definition of what it means to be successful as an entrepreneur. So ladies and gents, I introduce you to the business savage herself, Cassandra Britton. Cassandra, welcome to the Embrace and Expand podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that introduction. Here to just raise a glass ceiling. So appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely. Well, I recently discovered you through some synchronicities of friends within the Instagram world. And as soon as I started reading about your back history, I was like, I have to have this woman onto the podcast, because just the way that first, 19 years old to start your first business. That's amazing. I mean, I know myself, like I was full into working for a retail location selling high-end home theater equipment. And it took me 6 years of doing that before I was like, you know what? I need to do this on my own and venture out and branch out. So the fact that you were able to get there at such a young age is really, really inspiring. And I hope inspiring to some of the listeners who are also in that younger age range that, hey, if you can do it, if I can do it, they can do it too. So why don't you just take a few minutes to kind of tell our listeners maybe a little bit more about your story and truly what got you to this point?
Sure. Thank you. I would love that. So my background, I always started this way in sharing because I feel like it has a lot of support in why I am the way that I am and why I called my business the Business Savage. I grew up a competitive hockey player. So I'm Canadian. I've been playing hockey since I was 3 years old. I say that I can actually skate better than I can walk. And so for a very large portion of my life, it really crafted who I was in terms of teamwork and having really strong disciplinary habits, in terms of like, I chose a really straight edge life. I didn't do any drugs. I didn't go out to parties. I was on the ice 6 times a week. So I grew up a competitive hockey player, playing female hockey and playing boys hockey, went on to college and university. And that kind of pushed me into a route of sport business management. Ended up taking sport business management in school, which led me one of 5 women in a class of over 80 men who landed a position with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment and the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Toronto Raptors. That was in sports sponsorship. And here I was, thinking this was everybody's dream job and I should be so grateful, which of course I was, and obviously learned a lot. But I also knew that there were so many days where I sat there staring at my computer with a heater on my feet because I was cold and, didn't have the flexibility to do anything other than what my boss told me to do. And there was one day where I was trying to book off some time to take a expansive trip. I wanted to go over to Asia and I didn't have enough work days left. Like I didn't have enough vacation days left. And I said to myself, this is not living. This is absolutely not living. And there was a point growing up, I remember driving a hockey practice where my dad, we had this conversation. There was a really fancy car that drove by. And I was like, Dad, if I'm a doctor one day, can I afford that car? I was probably 12, maybe 10, 11, 12. And he goes, maybe, depending. I said, if I'm a lawyer, can I afford that car? And he's like, well, maybe if you're a really good lawyer and you marry a surgeon or you guys have a lot of money together, like maybe you guys could afford that car. And I'm like, what if I'm a business owner? And he said the way I said it, and I just lit up and had this like excitement and expression of creating my own future. He goes, you're definitely going to be a business owner, Cass. So yeah, he was an entrepreneur. My uncle is a very successful entrepreneur. He's owned over 70 businesses. Half of them have gone belly up. Half of them have been very successful. So I was kind of always around the energy of entrepreneurs. And there was just one point where I was working for MLSE and I just knew that it wasn't my path. And I decided to take a chance on entrepreneurship. I had this creative expression inside of me and I knew that I wanted to bring that out. I just didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. And so I went to school for makeup artistry and started, doing weddings on the side, which turned into a bedroom in my house, which turned into a really small room that I was renting, which turned into hiring some staff, bigger space, hiring some staff, bigger space. And eventually we're in the 2,000 square foot facility that we're in now. And then COVID hit. And so like so many of us, when things like that happen, I think a lot of people, they really just turned into hermits and they let everything happen to them and they didn't know how to handle it. Where I think I had about a week of a pity party maximum. And I was like, I'm pivoting. Like, I'm not going to let the government tell me that I can't work and I can't create my own freedom anymore. So I took a course in coaching. I went back to my roots in branding and marketing and what I had taken in school. I structured some really great programs in terms of how can I help other business owners, and not just beauty business owners. I work with all kinds of business owners. The principles that have gotten me to the success that I'm at today at that point. And a lot of it was, branding and marketing, but it was also the mindset. It was the thoughts that I tell myself every day and the habits that I have every day that actually have gotten me to success. And when a door has slammed in my face, or when I was faced with lawsuits, or when I've got intense labor board claims, or when you get a bad review, or when you just don't know what to do anymore and you don't know how to scale anymore, where do you turn? And so that is a big part of what the Business Savage is. And what it's really turned into today is a community, a platform, a space where business owners have this strategy that they need to scale, but also they develop the mindset skills that they need to scale themselves alongside their business. I've started a couple of other businesses since then. I've taken a really beautiful spiritual journey. I have a retreat business with some friends. I do sound healing. I'm a singer. So I've kind of like pulled all of my tricks into everything that I'm doing now. And I've really carved a very beautiful and unique life for myself. And now I'm down here in Austin, Texas. So that's my Coles Notes version.
That's such a beautiful story. And I think so incredible at how you were able to take all of your talents and everything that you've learned from some pretty diverse experiences and backgrounds, where most people would look at it, just like you said, of, just because you started out in business as a makeup artist doesn't mean that that information that you learned isn't applicable to all of the other types of businesses. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, business is business. Regardless of how mm-hmm. it's showing up, fundamentally, you still have to utilize a lot of the same practices and a lot of the same keys. So how have you found your spiritual journey that you touched on has started to play a role and an impact in how you show up in your business?
I don't know if we have enough time to talk about all of that, but I could definitely touch on it because I don't know how woo-woo you want to get. I'm all about the woo-woo, so I could go all day about this stuff. But spirituality, it's like, and there's so many different different definitions of what that means, right? Everybody kind of calls that something else. Recently, I've found my relationship with God again. 18 years, I didn't go to church. My father's father passed away, and my dad blamed the church and pulled us out of church at a young age. And so 18 years, I also blamed God for it. Recently found my faith, recently got rebaptized a couple of weeks ago. So, that's a whole journey. But really, I'm talking that when I talk about spirituality, I'm talking so much about connecting with the universe, connecting with Mother Earth, and connecting with what's inside. And I think that's one of the biggest things that has transformed me, not only as an entrepreneur, but as a human being and as a partner, and as a communicator, and as a friend, and as a daughter, as a coach, is my ability to tune into myself and to understand myself. Because I know so many people are looking for external gratification all the time in everything that we do. We have to have, well, what do you think? Well, does social media say it's okay? Did I get enough likes? Does my mom approve? Does my dad approve? Does my partner approve? Does all of these things where it's like, if we can actually learn how to quiet that noise and tune back into ourselves and into our bodies, we have all of the answers that we need inside of us. And so my spiritual journey has been about a lot of plant medicine, and it's been a lot of going inward to really understand, like, what was my soul before? What journey has she traveled? And how is that showing up in the body that I'm walking in today, and helping me make the decisions? And when do we feel unaligned, and why does that feel so unaligned? Well, it's because I'm not speaking my truth, or I'm not in alignment with who my soul is and what my soul wants me to be doing. But this noise is out there and it's distracting me from who I want to be. So spirituality is to say it's changed my life is an understatement. It's completely changed my life, opened my mind to the most beautiful relationships I've ever encountered. Some people that you connect with on such a beautiful level. And it changes your entire life when you can actually connect with another soul. So I'm very woo-woo. Depends on how woo you want me to go.
Hey, you on this show, you can go as woo-woo as you want. We are all about really diving into that. I mean, the podcast that released today, for example, was, I'm not sure if you're familiar with cacao drinking chocolate. Michael and Mackenzie McPherson.
Of course, yes.
So they were on the show, and their episode came out today. And originally we were just going to talk all about ceremonial grade cacao and how beautiful it is to work just not only with yourself, and just like you said, it's one of the many plant medicines that you can use to really start to get to know yourself and crack yourself open. But we took a deep tangent in talking about dragons and all kinds of different stuff. So it's like, on this podcast, I really want it to be, and have always wanted it to be, an open platform for both myself and the guests to come on to really share these truths. And if somebody listening is like, well, that's woo-woo, that's one definition of it and one perspective. But I think, and I'm willing to bet you'll probably agree, that once you get on the spiritual journey, and especially once you've taken some deep dives with yourself and plant medicines, you start to have the awareness that there is a much bigger picture at play here than what meets the eye. There's a lot more to life and truly living life than what society has trained us to do. And so many of us that I think grew up in the 80s and 90s especially were hyper-focused and trained to become corporate slaves, to just become part of the system. And that is what will dictate you being successful. I have discovered in my journey that as I have followed more of my path, and just as you touched on, gotten to know myself more and what my own definition, which is beautiful that it's on your website, of like discovering your own definition of what it means to be successful. That 12-year-old self looked at the fancy car driving down the road and probably put a stigma on that's what it means to be successful. But as we get on the journey and we acquire some of those things, we start to realize that it's just stuff. What has made me feel truly successful is having conversations like this, having platforms where my clients can come and can feel safe and open to dive deep into that journey, knowing that there's somebody else there to hold their hand when they need it, but to also give them the strength to know that, just like you touched on, we have all of the answers within. We don't need somebody else to tell us exactly how things need to be or exactly what way we need to. But with that being said, we do fall into traps sometimes, and we need that helping hand to know, okay, like, I'm stuck in my business. I don't know what else to do. Cassandra, what do I do from here?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, this whole path, like, I feel like I want to like shake people's heads, and this is just like the generator in me. I want to shake people's heads and just be like, I want you to have your spiritual awakening. Like, the moment that you have that spiritual awakening, your life becomes so much more abundant and beautiful. And it's like, you can't rush that. There's no time on it. You don't know when it's going to be. And people will start exploring into personal development, and they start listening to podcasts, and they start listening to people like yourself and following the guidance of someone like myself. But it's really in that unique moment where it's like that light bulb that almost goes off for them, that they're like, holy smokes, this is what life is actually all about. I remember after my first plant medicine ceremony, I came out, and still to this day, I don't see people as people. I see them as souls. And it's like, sometimes I can be in the most crowded space, and it's just like this and you feel energy so differently. And I can be in the most crowded space, and it's like, all of the thoughts that used to go through my head of like, what, am I standing weird? Does this person think I'm in their way? What does that person think about me? And, the social anxiety and stuff that starts to go through our heads. And I'm like, this is so cool. Like all of the different souls, I want to know the path that soul has traveled. I want to know the path that soul has traveled and how small we actually are in the world. It's like, it's just a whole different perspective. And you become so grateful over the smallest things in life that, when I moved down here to Austin, I'm grateful to have a beautiful big home, beautiful big bedroom here. And old Cassandra wanted to fill this house with stuff. I wanted to have the nicest bed. I wanted to decorate everything all fancy. And I wanted to have all these nice things. And as I sat here and I asked myself, well, why? Why do I need to fill this house with fancy things? Who am I trying to prove that to? And what void am I trying to fill by buying all these big fancy things? Why can't I just sit in an empty house for a couple of weeks and find my own footage, right? Like, why do I have to fill it with all of these things in order to I'm feeling a certain way. Well, let's go buy something so I can get that fix, so I can get that hit, that dopamine hit. So, still it's nowhere near where I want it to be. And I'm gifting myself when I've accomplished certain things that I'm proud of, or I've spoken my truth in a relationship the way that I normally wouldn't have. I'm rewarding myself by, okay, I'll go buy a plant because I like plants, or I'll go buy a new cool piece of artwork or something like that. Because it's just so different when you have that realization and you feel so small, like so small and such a beautiful, you're able to check your ego. I used to have the biggest ego and I used to be so stubborn. And when you're able to put down that shield and just open up your heart to receiving, it's just such a beautiful, freeing place to live.
I can't agree more. And I really enjoy the fact that you talked about rewarding yourself in buying a plant or art, because I love plants too. I think plants make people happy. There is definitely something about having that greenery around yourself, but also rewarding yourself with something that will continue to grow with you. And for me, caring for plants has always meant, like, as I care for myself and I put that love and attention into something else, and then over time I get to see myself grow, just like I can see that plant grow. And then pieces of art is beautiful because it always reminds you of that moment in which you acquired it, whether that's acquiring it at a festival or a fair or something like that, or the moment in which you decided that there was something within that piece of art that you recognized as a part of yourself. And then you can hang it on the wall and be able to have that as a reminder of that piece of you, that spark that gives you that inspiration every single time that you look at it. It's really beautiful.
Your muse, finding your why. You touched on that a little bit, right? With your definition of success.
Yeah.
I think that's a really big one. And a really big one that I help a lot of my clients through is, I'm really glad that you touched on that too, is everybody's definition of success looks so different, but yet everyone thinks that it has to be the same. They think it has to be a certain amount of money, or driving a certain car, or living in a certain house, or having a certain type of relationship. And so one of the things that I really help my clients do is understanding what is your why and what is your actual definition of success. So I do a lot of spiritual work. We have to quiet all of that external noise and get really, really, really deep into what does your soul want? What does your heart want? And how do you know that you've reached success? When will it ever be enough? Because I promise you, if it's always coming from external sources, you will never reach success, ever.
Yeah.
You can have the $6 million house, but you wish it was the 7. You can have the fancy car, but you want the one that's different color or faster. You can have a beautiful, healthy relationship, but you'll always be peeking over the fence at something else because you're always looking for something that's coming from outside rather than inside. Right. So when I take it to a business perspective, and the reason why I incorporate so much mindset is because maybe you already are successful and you're feeling so stuck in your business, but it's all inside of your head. You're not stuck at all. You've created exactly what you wanted.
You bring up a very good point, because that makes me think of my first business, which I still have, which was doing high-end home theater installation. That was a dream of mine ever since I was a kid, and thought that it would be so cool to build theaters for people in their houses and give them exactly what they wanted. And yet 13 years of that didn't make me feel any more fulfilled than I thought I would. At first I did, because like you touched on it was giving me all of this external validation of clients telling me how amazing it is and how good of a job I did and how much they appreciated me. And then being able to buy the cars and the house and having, a 100-inch screen in my living room and all of this extravagant stuff. yet I didn't feel any happier. I didn't feel any more successful. It was just like you said, it was on to the next thing. Okay, now what's going to give me that next dopamine hit? What's going to fill that void that I'm feeling within myself? And it wasn't until my spiritual awakening and I really started to get to know myself and what I actually desired and wanted, getting to know my why for what really is my purpose. What am I truly here for? Am I really here to install theaters for people? Or am I really here to help create a shift, help to make this world be a better place by making my world be a better place? And that took me on the avenue of my wife and I. We bought a school bus and we converted it into a tiny house and sold all of our stuff. And we traveled for 4.5 years. It is amazing. And I will say it's a lot of work. You have to get used to doing some things very, very differently, but the freedom in which you have to, and we're not living in the bus right now. We moved out of it for the winter time, but in the fall, we're going to move back in and start traveling again. But it really does give you that freedom to live life on your own terms. And in living in that bus and having substantially less stuff, like I went through a couple of moments, if you will, releasing all of that stuff and feeling like I'm no longer that same person. Who am I? And it was like this whole new rediscovery of self through letting go of the attachment to all of the things that I had. And feeling like those parts of me that I'm letting go of, and thinking about all of the dollar signs that are going out the window because I remember how much I spent on this, but I'm only getting this much back, and putting value in the things instead of putting value in myself and the experiences that I was going to have. And now I don't even remember half the shit I got rid of. I don't even remember most of the things. All I do remember, though, are the good memories of living in that house, the good memories of that we've had from being on the road, and the places that we've seen and the people that we've met through stepping outside of that comfort zone and choosing to live life on our terms instead of choosing to live life on other people's terms. And I think it's beautiful that you integrate mindset so much into your business, because that's all that was. It was a shift in mindset to make that choice of, I can actually live life a different way that I've been told my entire life. And that's okay.
Amen. Amen. Yes. 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 You're speaking my language. I cannot tell you how much I resonate with this. And I want to touch on something small that you said there. I shouldn't say it's small because it's actually huge. Is like a rebirth. And I think a lot of people like yourself who have gone through a spiritual awakening, it truly, truly is a rebirth. And I have been battling with this so intensely since I've moved to Austin, because it was like brewing when I was in Toronto and feeling like I just really didn't belong. And all of my friends, beautiful people, love their hearts, but doing things that I didn't want to do. And you know, the drinking and the partying and the way they talk to themselves and the lifestyle that they live. And I'm like, this is not me, but it always was me. Right. And even my family, I have a very, very, very challenging relationship with my parents because they are in their 70s. They are stuck in a victim mindset. They do not understand the expansiveness that I bring into my life. They don't understand any of it. And so they've gotten to the point where they're like, we can't change your mind. So, I mean, we're scared for you, but like, go do what you got to do. And stepping into this life in Austin, everyone is like, how are you doing that? How? Why? Aren't you scared? What happens if you fail? What happens if you don't know anybody? Like, just throwing all of their insecurities all over me. And so there's that little bit of my old self that's like, what are you doing? Stay in Toronto, stay here. It's safe. You have a 7-figure business. You have overflowing of clientele. You have everything you've ever wanted here. What are you doing? And then there's that future me. And there's that like my soul's purpose me that's like calling me literally as if there's a string and it's pulling me. And I always go up because I feel like it's pulling me up. And it's like, no, your future and your life and what you are destined to do in this world is actually going to happen when you step into your life in Austin and you shed all of these old beliefs and you leave them all behind. But then you get here and it's like, okay, now what? Like, what did I want this for? Like, I don't really know anybody here and I'm trying to create a new life and I haven't fully stepped into it yet. So this is still foreign, but my old me is foreign too. So I'm like stuck in this place of limbo, and I'm definitely on the other side now. But it was this process like this. And for anyone who's going through something like this, please reach out. I would love to hold space for you. Because for me, it was the highest of highs followed by the lowest of lows in identity and understanding who I was and really like connecting inward with myself. And the more that I could tune inwards and speak my truth and just knew that I was following with whatever God had in store for me, the more it just felt right. And I could sleep better and I could smile more without even knowing why I was smiling. Or people around me would be like, you have this like infectious energy being around you. And I'm like, because I'm speaking my truth. Oh, it's such a powerful, powerful topic, the rebirth. It's been challenging and hard, but it's been so beautiful and fresh and freeing all in the same time.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, anybody who is like longing for that spiritual awakening, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into, you know, until you're actually in it. Do you realize that, oh, this isn't all like rainbows and butterflies and meditation and beautiful spirituality. It's like, it's messy. It's chaotic. It's like this, you rub up against these edges of yourself that either you didn't know existed or you've been denying for so long that you forgot they existed. But when you rub up against them, all of a sudden they cut you because it's like, ooh, I forgot that was there. Now I have to deal with this. Now I have to look at all of this stuff. But as you continually rub up against those edges, they start to soften. They start to expand a little bit. And then next thing you know, you are stepping into that radiant version of yourself that is infectious, that people can feel just by being around you because you've tuned into who you are instead of tuning out who you are.
Something that I would love to add to that, because it's a huge thing. I have a community for this one is specifically female entrepreneurs. I work with both men and women, but I have a specific mindset community just for females because there's a different level. I do a lot of polarity work. So a lot of talking about the masculine and the feminine, how that shows up in our lives and our relationships and in our business. So this community, it's called Evolve. And one of the things that we do inside of it is we have the women, because it gets messy at first, we have them uncover their darkness and then we help them learn to love their darkness, right? Because so many women think, well, I need to stop doing this. And in order to heal, I have to change and all these things. And they're focused on healing and growth, which is part of it, of course. But I think the biggest like aha light bulb going off freeing moment was when I was able to look at all of my crap, look at all of my traumas, look at all of my stories, look at all of my darkness, right, is what I'm going to call it. And instead of trying to hide from it, instead of pretending it wasn't there, instead of being fearful of it, instead of having shame or guilt around it, learning to love it as all of me, as part of me. That is where the true beauty and self-acceptance and self-love came from. This is part of who I am. That doesn't change. These traumas and these things that have happened for me, they're part of my story, right? And they're part of what makes me who I am. So I love the conversation of just owning who you are, every aspect of it, not just your beautiful shining moments, but also your dark moments, and learning how to love those, embrace those, and grow with those as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly the tagline of this podcast. Embrace everything that you are so you can expand into the best version of yourself. Because that truly is, and I really, really enjoy, and thank you so much for touching on the fact of it is about accepting every part of yourself. It's not about needing to change. And I think that's a very misguided conception when it comes to the spiritual awakening. And when using the term better version of yourself or best version of yourself. And I got into a little bit of a debate on Instagram with someone who made a post saying to stop using that verbiage, stop saying you're becoming the best version of yourself. But when we accept everything about ourselves and stop trying to ignore certain parts of ourselves or shun certain parts of ourselves, we do become somebody different. And that version of ourselves that can love all the parts of ourselves, isn't that a better version of us than the person that couldn't love all those parts of ourselves? It's not necessarily that we need to become somebody different. We need to become different than the person that we became when we weren't actually being exactly who we were meant to be.
I'd be curious to know why that was such a trigger for that person, because obviously they've got some darkness inside of them they still need to love.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. And it's, I'm still very much on that journey of accepting all of the parts of myself, of accepting the fearful side of me that worries, accepting the part of me that still looks down on myself from subconscious programming and things like that. But there's been a shift lately of recognizing that there's still work to do, but having compassion for myself that there's still work to do. So on your journey,
there's always work to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's literally what I was just going to ask. Like, do you believe that it's ever going to end, or is it just always this onward journey of shifting and pivoting when we need to, and accepting what we need to when we need to?
So simple answer is it's a lifelong journey of growth, lifelong. And I believe, we go to the spiritual avenue. I believe that even when my soul, or when my body is no longer here, my soul is going to continue to go on somewhere, and it's going to continue to be growing. So the second that you stop growing, or you think, oh, I've reached it, I've done the things that I want to do and I'm feeling really good. It's like, great. The more aware you are, and the more, I like to say, awake that you are, the more, and sometimes, like, I did a post about this the other day. Sometimes I'm like, and this is just, the like, this is intense and a lot coming out. So sometimes I'm like, I wish I wasn't so awake. Sometimes I just wish I wasn't so awake, and that I could just go through one day where it was just easy and I didn't care about things. But it's like, I will notice in every conversation I have an opportunity to be better, or a way that my darkness came back in. And I'm like, oh, the darkness showed up there. Okay, this is what I can do next. So it's just constantly in your face. And the more aware you become and the more awake you become, the more it all, like, every relationship is an opportunity for me to show, what have I learned? How have I grown? And how can I continue to show up better? Talk about, wanting to be and being in a relationship, a romantic relationship. Oh my gosh. Well, that, if you're with the right person, will that challenge you in such a beautiful way, when they are a mirror and can reflect back to you the person that you're trying to become, but the ways your old self and the darkness is still showing through, right? And you're still having things that you need to work through. It is a lifelong journey. And if you truly want to continue, happiness is a choice. I also believe it's a skill, but I believe it's a choice that you choose every single day. And so anyone who is like, we could talk about victim language for some people who aren't necessarily sure. Things like must be nice, or, oh, I'm not that type of person, or I won't have those opportunities because he or she is this. That's why that happened to them or for them. I don't get that. Then must be nice, right? You hear those types of comments. That's that victim mindset. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. If that's how you truly believe that, your opportunities are being handed to you. It is a never ending, beautiful life that we get to grow through every single day. And I don't think that you've ever reached the best version of yourself. I think it's in constant pursuit of choosing happiness, choosing love every single day, and having the opportunity to walk through this beautiful world and this life that we're blessed and we're given to grow, to become something better. And for anybody who doesn't want that, if you want to sit on your couch and eat Cheetos and that's okay for you and that feels good for you, then boo, you do you. But that is not the path that I am on. And that's not the message that I'm preaching.
Yeah. It's kind of back to that, your own definition of success, and being okay with wherever you're at, but also being okay and accepting the fact that things can always be different if you make that conscious choice.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that hit so hard. So many people that I wish that I could just shake their head and just like tell them that message and actually have them understand. Because, and I'll say this, I haven't had, and I'll get as vulnerable and emotional as you want me to. I haven't had, really huge, compared to what I would say some people, traumas in their life. I've had my traumas, of course I have. And I've had, some things that I'm not proud of, right? But I think that there's some people that think that because of the life that they were given at a young age, or the way that they were born, or I was born into poverty, or I was abused as a child, or all of these types of things, that their life has to be a certain way because of that. And I couldn't, and I have so much sympathy for everything that anyone has ever been through, but I couldn't agree with that more the opposite direction, that it is what you make of it. And it is your choice to decide that you are going to continue to hold the identity of all these things, and that's the person that you have to be because of these things that happened to you, or you get to decide the future that you want, and you can stay stuck in this victim mindset and let all of these things play in your head, and you are the way that you are because of this, or you can decide that you want more and that you want to be different. And it starts by acceptance, right? It starts by self-acceptance, going inward, deciding that you're going to love your darkness, you're going to love all of this stuff anyways, because it was a part of what God had in store for you. And the universe, whatever it is, whatever higher power it is that you believe in, and just having full acceptance and surrender to, you can have whatever life you want. Happiness is a choice. And I don't have anything, and this is, I'll get a 2-second little rant here. It's a long story. I've had a lot of people, and there's a very big podcast that went viral from these gentlemen that interviewed me on the street, but a lot of people assuming that I have success because maybe I had an OnlyFans account, or because of the way that I look, or because of, all of these things that just couldn't be more true. And so I have a whole podcast episode that I shared on it, and it was this big thing. And, sometimes I hear it quite often that you have the life that you have because of the way that you look, or because of, you're a woman, you must have an OnlyFans account. That's the only way that women have success, and all of these types of things. And it's like, I literally just look at them and I'm like, I want to know the little inner child inside of you. And I want to know where that child was lost. Like, I want to know where that hurt came from, that you felt the need to say that to me, because I promise you, I was not handed anything ever in my entire life. I have never had anyone give me money. I've worked for everything my entire life. And if I could just give you a little bit of the courage that I had to take the leap, you can have it too. I promise you can have it too.
That's such a fantastic point of view. And I could not agree more that it really does come down to having that belief in yourself. Just like you touched on, having that confidence that I can do this. And I made a post yesterday that was it was just a couple of slides saying mindset is everything. And you can either say, I have to, or you can say, I get to. Because the words that we choose to use have power. There's a reason it's called spelling. We cast spells with the words that we use. And so it's when we can be, and I really believe that the spiritual awakening process is an awareness process. It's having awareness around the thoughts that we think, the words that we use, the places that we go, the people that we hang out with, the TV shows that we watch, the music that we listen to. All of it's information to our subconscious mind that is either affirming a story or not affirming a story. And so if your story is one of victim mentality, and you continue to hang out with other people who have a victim mentality and continue putting yourself in situations that enforce that victim mentality, you're always going to be a victim. But through the awareness of recognizing, oh, I'm actually the one that's making myself a victim, not the circumstances outside of me. Yes, exactly. Creating that reality, and then starting to recognize, just like you pointed out, of moving from Toronto, getting away from people that were no longer in alignment with the alignment that you were feeling inside of yourself. And recognizing that I need to detach from this environment and go to a completely new environment to find more of that internal alignment. And I'd be curious to know, since making the move to Austin, have you found that more of the people that you've met, more of the interactions that you've had, are continually drawing you further and further into alignment with where you actually see yourself going?
1000%, yes. And there was no doubt in my mind that that would happen. And that is the sole biggest reason why I am here. The second biggest reason is business opportunities. There are a lot of entrepreneurs in this city. I'm also a motivational speaker. I do a lot of business speaking and mindset speaking. So getting in front of the right people to get on the right stages was a big part of this. But I wanted to touch on a couple of things because you spoke so beautifully but casually to the law of attraction, which I'm not sure how much you've talked about that on this show or how much of your audience knows about this. And for anyone who I say this and they're like, okay, I really encourage you to look into it and start practicing it, because when you mentioned your words are your reality, the law of attraction, it talks about everything that happens in your life, whether somebody comes into your life, you get into a car accident, you get a beautiful job opportunity, you lose your job, whatever it is, you've attracted it. You have created your reality and you've attracted all of that into your life. By simply being the person that you are, you create your reality. That is very woo-woo and that's a lot of energy talk, but that is like the foundation of the law of attraction. And I believe it to my core. So anyone who is stuck in a situation where they feel like it's this victim and it's like, oh, of course that would happen to me, or that's just my life, right? Well, is it? You're creating it every day. The way that you act, the choices that you make, the words that you speak to yourself, the people that you surround yourself with, you are creating your reality. And so if you don't like it, the only person that gets to decide whether or not they want to change it is you. I can't change it for you, right? Listening to 10,000 beautiful podcasts like this every day isn't going to change it for you unless you decide to take the action from within. So, I mean, that is such a huge part of why I'm here and the relationships that I've been able to build here. I think one of the ways that we connected was through some of the somatic family, the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life, right? When you can understand, put yourselves in rooms with and have conversations with people who are not only vibrating, because I'm a big frequency person with my sound healing. When we talk about frequency and we talk about vibrating on a level that attracts people, when you leave the energy of these people and you feel good, you feel expansive, you feel challenged. And sometimes it's not a good challenge. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, they called me out on my shit. But it's like they will expand you, right? They'll expand you in a beautiful way. And I don't own a TV. I can't tell you the last time I turned a TV on. I don't listen to music that's not, like, my music taste has changed. My voice, I'm a singer since I was a young girl. The way I sing is different now. Just the way that I live my life, the things that I do, having mind, body, and soul connection. So respecting the health that I put into my body, the exercise that I choose for my body, the noise that I choose to put into my mind, right? All of these things will create your reality. And so if you want to just, like, I always use this reference, but if you want to watch TV and your choice is more like watching The Bachelor and Netflix and putting all of these choices into your head that to me are not healthy, well, you wonder why that's what you're attracting. A lot of my girlfriends, they might get mad at me for saying this, but they're on Hinge and they're like, like frantically scrolling through these, on these dating apps and just never feeling like they're good enough, because I could talk all day about the world of online dating, but it's just like, they need to get off of that and they need to focus on themselves for a hot damn minute. Because if you walk outside and you hold your head up and you say hi to somebody and you sit in a coffee shop and you smile at somebody, you're going to make connections. I haven't been on dating apps in 6.5 years, and the most beautiful men have entered my life from just having my head up and being in the right rooms.
Yeah.
So yes, my life has changed being in Austin. It has expanded me in beautiful ways.
So you touched on sound healing and frequency vibration. And I actually did a podcast earlier in the season talking about why the law of attraction may not be working for you. And there, I think, is a very missing key that a lot of the law of attraction talk misses, and that's the law of vibration. Because you can think these thoughts all you want. You can think yourself and visualize yourself of being highly successful or having the beautiful relationship or working the job that you really want. But unless you can get yourself in a vibrational match to that thing, it's going to have a much more difficult time actually attracting to you. And so I love that you touch on sound and being around certain people and feeling that vibration that just happens when you get a collective group of people that are all humming to the same tune. How have you noticed sound playing an important part in helping people to shift from one vibrational state to another?
Yeah. So I am just beginning my sound healing journey. So I really love that you're asking me this question. I have my practitioner course and actually making my first trip out to Arizona at the end of July for it. I've never been to Sedona and I'm super, super excited about, I don't know if you've ever been, but
Yeah.
super, super excited about it. But music in general and just being in, I've, done a lot of the plant medicine ceremonies and been to a lot of mindset retreats. And I've been a part of a huge mastermind myself, and knowing and music is such a big part of my life, singing and playing guitar and playing piano. So it's the frequency of certain notes. And if you want to get into like, it aligns with certain chakras, right? So if certain people understand this, you play a certain note, it can open up a certain chakra. And then there's certain affirmations and things that we can say when that chakra is more, vibrating on a higher level, that will help us kind of align things. And again, getting really woo-woo and spiritual, but that's kind of what sound healing, and when we play certain notes, what it's supposed to do is it taps into a certain chakra and it helps us vibrate on certain levels. For me, the first thing that comes to mind that I just wanted to share around that is like, I think you probably talk about imposter syndrome, and a lot of people probably know what it is, right? Or that feeling of being a fraud or being a fake. And I think that everybody has the ability to feel vibrational energy. And if you don't, then you need to take a hot minute to be present. Because when you walk into a room, I physically feel the vibration when I get off an airplane in Austin versus I get off of an airplane in Toronto. I can physically feel it. You can feel, if you were in tune with this and if you were in tune with vibrations, you can feel it. When I shake somebody's hand, I can feel their vibration. And some people are like, oh, what is it? A sexual energy? No, it's not a sexual energy. I feel their soul, right? I can feel the energy that they're vibrating on. And I think it is so important for you to be in rooms with people who have that same level of vibration or higher, because if their level of vibration is low, and there's not to say that there aren't people in my life who do have a low vibration on a regular basis. I still love them. I'm working on trying to raise it for them, right? But you can feel it. And it will change you too. So sound is a powerful, powerful, powerful tool for us to tap into those frequencies and that vibration. We can start to reprogram things because we're able to start to get into our subconscious at a different level just by the sound of a certain note, by just singing a certain phrase, right? And then starting to put affirmations into our subconscious when you're playing that certain note that open that certain chakra that helps us vibrate on a certain level. As I said, I'm starting to just really get into sound healing, but there's a couple of really beautiful books for anyone that's interested in getting into that space. I can share them with you to leave in the show notes. It's so cool. We are just tapping the surface on how much healing sound can actually do.
I could not agree more. It's one of the reasons why I love somatic breathwork so much, is at how much the soundtrack. And when I first went through the certification program at the beginning of 2022, that was the one thing I was the most excited about, was creating soundtracks to guide people through these experiences. Because, the neuro-linguistic programming that's used, the cues that are used, they're really only part of the equation. Like if the soundtrack isn't dialed, you're not going to have that same experience, because it helps you to feel that vibrational state. And I've been reading this really beautiful book called Sound Medicine recently that is talking a lot about...
That's the one I was going to refer.
Oh, wonderful. So we're in full alignment with that information. But it's beautiful how she's coming to sound from a very scientific background while also approaching it from a Vedic medicine background, and at how mantras can play a very important part in getting your body to be attuned to certain frequencies, because those mantras create a vibration very, very specific within yourself, which I think, just like you said, we're just starting to scratch the surface on what that information is. And I can only imagine how much more information there still is to discover. I mean, even some of the talks that are on Gaia TV of how sound was used way back with ancient cultures to move stones. Maybe sound was what was actually used to create the pyramids of Giza, in being able to shape the stones and move the stones without actually using some of the rudimentary technology that modern science believes was used at that period of time. So being in high-end home theaters for a very long time, sound was like one of the most important aspects. And anytime people would ask, like, where do we spend the most money? It was always on the speakers, because the score of a movie is what creates the emotion that's felt from that, or the TV show or anything. And when you have this awareness, folks, like when you're watching a movie or watching TV, listen to the music, because the music is what will create that emotion that's coming up in you, whether it's drama, whether it's fear, whether it's happiness and laughter. It's all matched to the music. Sound is truly a fundamental, important factor. Music has always been a driving force within my life for a very, very long time. And then upon getting more into these spiritual practices and breath work and meditation, I've also started to realize the importance of silence. Without enough silence, we don't actually hear our own internal music and the note that we are meant to play. I recently listened to the Deja Blue podcast. I'm sure you're familiar with that one. And Garen Jones was on there as a guest, and he was talking about how he believes one of his superpowers is being able to hear each person's note, and then grouping together all of the right people that are playing the exact right note to create music. And that's what community is all about.
Yeah, Garen is magical. He's down here in Austin, and I've had an opportunity to go over to his place and play some pickleball. And the people and this is what I mean by community of people. The people that he invites and that has over there, it's like, whoo, it is powerful energy, right? And they don't even really need to say much. You can just tell the way they carry themselves, the way they hold space. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah, he's incredible. Big Garen Jones fan.
Yeah, I agree. You know, he really keeps that focus, and you touched on it a little bit, of the inner child work. And in my coaching program, that's where we start. We always start with an inner child connection breathwork session to get people to recognize that how much of the stuff that we deal with is carried from our childhood. And when we can address all that childhood stuff, then it's almost like everything else starts to come into alignment all on its own without actually having to do any of that major work. Would you agree that inner child work has played a big part in your spiritual awakening?
Huge, humongous. Like, I mean, I feel like if you're in this space, I feel like you can't say anything else because it's proven. Like, so much of it. I mean, a small example, I went to a Primal Flow and Glow party on the weekend. And this is an example of the types of things people do in Austin, right? In Toronto, it's like, let's go to the bar, let's get drunk, let's go dancing, all these types of things. But here it's, let's go to a Primal Flow dance class and let's learn how to crawl on the floor like wild animals and roar in each other's faces and let our inner child come out and play. Like, that's the type of things that we do here, right? Your inner child. And I was at a coffee shop the other day, and I literally brought so much I was laughing hysterically by myself at a coffee shop, looking up at these children that were playing on these seahorses and whatever at this coffee shop. They had this little play area. And this one kid was like pretending to pee on the other kid, and the other kid's roaring, and then he grabs out a fake sword and they're fighting and they're doing all this stuff, right? They're just being kids, and they don't have a freaking care in the world what anybody thinks about them. They are authentically expressing them, how they felt in that moment. And at some point along that journey, somebody tells you, don't sit that way, don't speak too loud, shush, be more quiet. Why are you acting weird? Stop doing that. Think like this, be like this. That's not ladylike. You know, all of these things that we're told that make us form into what society tells us we should be, or what our parents tell us we should be, or what our friends tell us we should be. And their limiting beliefs get put onto us, and her limiting beliefs get put onto us. And then all of a sudden at one point we're walking around like freaking zombie robots, and we don't even know who the hell we are and why we're so miserable. And if we can go back, and that's why plant medicine is so powerful, because you don't only go back to your inner child, you go back to your soul in previous lives. I was a dancer in previous lives. I was a feather dancer in previous lives. And so I wonder why, when I am truly me, where I can't stop doing this, why I can't stop doing this and just being in such beautiful flow, and why I feel so happy and free when I'm doing this. But yet at some point, my dad said to me, you're a hockey player. Hockey players don't dance. So here I was thinking I wasn't supposed to be a hockey player and a dancer. I couldn't do both. So going back in and understanding, what does little Cassandra want? At what point was she told to stop singing? At what point was she told to stop expressing? At what point was she told to stop wearing her hair curly because somebody else thought it looked wild and crazy? It took me a long time to embrace wearing my natural curly hair and letting that goddess energy come out to play, because somebody told me it looked better when it was straight and it was too poofy and frizzy and I looked like a poodle, right? So inner child work, it is the most powerful way, I think, for someone to find out who they truly are and be able to express in a way that feels freeing, and stop walking your life like a zombie. And I'm not saying this because I'm perfect. I'm saying this because I'm so aware, and I work every day at letting that little inner girl come out and play. And part of it for me, I have a date with myself every single day at some point where I let her play, whatever that means. A lot of it is nature, climbing trees, being outside, dancing is a big one for me. There's a lot of resistance because I was told for so long, you're not a dancer, but I am. Mm-hmm. My little inner girl was a dancer. So really powerful work, really, really powerful work when you can go back into childhood and where you were told to stop authentically expressing who you naturally wanted to be.
Yeah. I think children are such amazing teachers specifically for that reason, because they give all of us that invitation to be a kid again, to allow that part of ourself that hasn't gone anywhere. They've just been so covered up by what other people have told us we should be, or the maybe failures or trials that we've gone through that have made us a little bit more rigid, or not be willing to step into that flow state and just laugh for the hell of it, or like you said, to just dance and allow the body to just flow however it wants to flow. And definitely a challenge to allow that inner child to come out and play. And I think that's beautiful that you brought up giving yourself a moment every single day to allow that inner child to come out and play, however that wants to look for you. And it's going to be different for each of us. You know, for my inner child, art, being creative, just being overall expressive, being silly and making weird voices. And Robin Williams was somebody I always looked up to as a kid. So I always liked the idea of like changing your voice and having different accents and things like that. So just having those simple moments and allowing yourself to be free. And I think that's really what inner child work is all about. It's about allowing that freedom of self-expression to come back out.
Yeah. It's funny because I used to ask some of my friends, you know, you sometimes go and get reflection from your friends. And I would say, what are some of the things that you like the most about me, or you value the most about me? Or if you could describe me in one word, what would it be? And it used to always be intense. They would always say you're intense, or you're confident, or you're, you know, ambitious. It was always something like that, you know, very driven in my business. And now the last couple of years, and anyone I meet in Austin, I'm always like, you know, what's one word where you use to describe me? And they always say silly. Like, you're silly. Yeah, you're intense. Yeah, you're a savage. Yeah, you're aggressive. Yeah, you're confident. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. But the first word they always say is either goofy or silly. Like, you're so silly. Like, I love that. That's beautiful.
If only all of us could adopt a little bit more silliness into our lives. It'd just make things easier. It'd just make things that much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Well, Cassandra, I think this is a perfect opportunity to ask you the Embrace and Expand signature question of what did you have to embrace in your life in order to expand into the person you are today?
Yeah, I love this question. It's such an expansive question, and I could take this so many different directions, but I think the one that I'm feeling really called to talk about, because it's something that I'm really exploring right now and have really been exploring, is I had to embrace my feminine. I had to, and, you know, it ties a little bit into the inner child, but I had to really embrace my feminine energy. I'm speaking a little bit to females when I say this. Most of us carry a very dominant masculine energy. And so you'll hear a lot of women that will say like, oh, like, surprise, surprise, I have a very dominant masculine energy. And for anyone who doesn't even really understand what this means, please reach out to me. I would absolutely love to have a conversation with you about polarity work. But for me, Growing up as a hockey player, playing competitive boys hockey, being an entrepreneur, feeling like I always had to prove something. My dad told me I was the son he never had, even though I have a younger brother, because I was the strong one. I was the dominant one. I was the one that was not allowed to cry. I was the one that wasn't allowed to show expression. And how that showed up in my business and in my relationships, it dictated a very, I had armor on and I was wearing a bulletproof vest when nobody had a gun. That's how I walked through life, right? Very protected and very guarded. And so embracing my feminine, and that allowed me to explore my spiritual journey. That allowed me to have experiences. My first somatic breathwork experience was with Jaggers. And I sat there like a stubborn little brat with my arms crossed, and I couldn't have an experience. And he pulled me aside afterwards and laughed at me because I couldn't have an experience, because I was like, no, I don't need this, right? Thought I was so tough that I didn't think I needed breathwork. And then finally, when I learned how to take that off, then all of a sudden I had the floodgates open in these really expansive sessions. It was embracing my feminine. And that doesn't mean just crying more. It means like embracing the flow inside of me, allowing myself grace, allowing myself to play, allowing myself freedom, speaking my truth, right? How many of us, we don't speak our truth and we don't honor our voice. So embracing my feminine energy and allowing her to come in and allowing that to show up in all aspects of my life and how I make decisions and the type of woman that I am, and standing in that powerful, the masculine, the powerful feminine energy, and really being able to find that balance. And it's a battle every day where I'm like, oh, I'm too in flow. I'm not getting anything done. Oh, I'm too structured and I'm hard on myself. I have an episode coming out this week on my podcast called The War Within a Woman. And it talks a lot about the voices in our head and the masculine and the feminine that come in. It's changed my entire life. And it's allowed me to have the realization that I'm already successful, rather than thinking that success looked like something else. It's allowed me to be soft. It's allowed me to open myself to love. It's allowed me to take a chance on this opportunity in Austin and all the other beautiful opportunities that are still in store for me, because I wasn't so structured and feeling so disciplined in my masculine. I still have that. Of course, we need that balance. But embracing my feminine, allowing her to come in and play, I feel more powerful and more free and more happy than I've ever felt in my entire life. So that's a big one that's on my heart right now.
Thank you for touching on that and really embracing. I mean, it comes back to that whole embracing all of the aspects of the self. Like, we all have that feminine or masculine, and most of us are hyper focused in one direction or another. But when we can start to live that middle way in between the two, recognizing that we're always going to kind of lean from one side to the other, dependent upon the situation and what it is that we need to do, but being able to truly find that balance, that's really where life starts getting interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's hard, right? It's not going to be easy. None of this stuff is easy, but it's a choice that I make every day, because I know how good it feels when I do feel in alignment. And I know what it feels like to be two in my feminine. And I know what it feels like to be two in my masculine. And I know when I'm faced with a decision as a Libra who's indecisive and has a difficult time making decisions, I know how to tune into my body and ask my intuition. I know what's right. The answer is within me, because I have that ability, because I've been able to balance my energies rather than coming from a place of ego or pride. Right. So it's been beautiful awakening.
Fellow Libra here as well. So I totally understand that difficulty making decisions.
What day?
October 9th.
Okay. On the 13th.
Nice. Very close. Very close. Yeah. It's always been interesting as a Libra of having this internal sense of always needing to be balanced. And I didn't understand for a really long time, not understanding like astrology, human design, the gene keys and all that fun stuff that helps us to understand more of like truly who we are and how each of us are individually designed. But this feeling of always needing to find balance was, until I had awareness around it, actually something that I didn't realize was holding me back, because it never really allowed me to speak my truth when I know that would disrupt the balance in a relationship or a friendship or business transaction or something like that. And now I recognize that, just like the balancing scales, they're meant to flow from one side to the other. They're not always meant to be stagnant right there in perfect balance all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay if they're not. I've learned that too, and it's very powerful.
It's been absolutely beautiful conversation with you, Cassandra. I really appreciate just the perspective in which you're bringing to business and helping to create more of this conscious connection with people's mindset first and foremost before really starting to address the business stuff. Because I know on my own journey through creating more of a consciously based business, it has been about doing a lot of internal work first to discover that why of why do I actually want to help people? Why do I want to show up in the world in this way? And how can that make a difference by me changing how I'm showing up and giving people that example to recognize that, hey, if I can do it, you can too. So really want to thank you for the work that you're doing and helping individuals to really step into their power and embrace all the parts of themselves.
Thank you. I feel like it's my calling, and it feels very soul filling. Like when you have those realizations and those moments where someone shares with you how, for example, in the Evolve program, it's a community for female entrepreneurs, and we do not talk about business. And they'll try, and they're like, oh, I thought I was getting marketing support here. And I'm like, this is a mindset community. I'm talking about all of the other stuff that's stopping you from the success that you desire. And when we dive into it, creating space, creating flow, creating abundance, creating time, we talk about this, spiritual approach to all of it. When you get those realizations afterwards of like, holy smokes, and those expressions of like, I just feel like I've unlocked so much. It's like, that is why we do it, right? Creating conscious people. So yeah. It feels very, very, very purpose driven.
I love it. I love it. So for those women or men that are listening that really resonate with the messages that you have to share, what is the best way for them to contact you and find out more?
Yeah, so I always give my website first because I've had my social media hacked. So www.thebusinesssavage.com. You can find all of our resources, join our mailing list. We share all kinds of beautiful stuff there. Our podcast is The Business Savage. They can tune in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And then Instagram, of course, we share a lot there, is at the.business.savage.
Beautiful. And I'll have all of that information in the show notes below for all of you to find quick, easy access to that. So Cassandra, before we part ways, what is one last little piece of advice that you would like to give the listeners to help them really embrace a better mindset so they can become business savages themselves?
Yeah, the last thing that I say around that is just always like, we're going to get knocked down. It's going to happen every day. I got a message this morning that kind of sent me on a bit of a spiral. And as long as we have the tools to get ourselves back on track, I really think that there's absolutely nothing that the universe can't throw at you that you can't handle. So I think understanding that everything that happens is happening for you. Truthfully, it is happening for you, finding the gift and opportunity in that. And just knowing that a savage will get knocked down, but we will always get back up. So it is not about, how many times you get knocked down. It's about how quickly you rise after falling, and that everybody can create the life that they want. They just need to get out of their own way.
So much truth in that. So much truth. I know from my own journey, really getting out of my own way has been a fundamental lesson that I am still learning each and every day.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been such a pleasure and really wonderful to get to know you a little bit more. And every time I have these beautiful conversations, it really helps to know that I'm not the only one out there doing the work. I'm not the only one that believes all of this same stuff, that there's so many beautiful individuals out there in the world doing the work to change themselves and make themselves the best version of who they possibly can be each and every day. And thus doing so by changing our internal world, we change our external world as well. Well, thank you again so much for your time, giving all of your wisdom to the listeners and myself. Greatly appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for being on another episode of the Embrace and Expand podcast. As I always say, I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. This podcast wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you. So thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.